She looked me in the eyes and said, "This is the only way to save our family." She wasn't talking about getting a second job. She wasn't talking about selling the house or cutting back on anything. She was talking about me, my life, my future. She was talking about handing me over to a man I had never met, like I was something she could put a price tag on and exchange for a clean slate. And the worst part, the part that still gets to me when I think about it, is that she had already made the plans before she even told me. She wasn't asking, she was informing me of something she had already decided. This is the story of the night my mom tried to use my engagement to pay off her debts to a rich businessman, and the moment I walked in with the man she had spent years looking down on and watched her entire world flip upside down in front of 30 people who had gathered to celebrate something that was never going to happen. To understand any of this, you need to understand my mom. She is not a bad person. I want to say that clearly before anything else, because this story could easily make her sound like a villain, and she's not. She's a woman who grew up being told that security came from money, that love was something you could afford or not afford, and that the most important thing a daughter could do was marry well. That was her whole belief system, built over decades. I didn't agree with it, but I understood where it came from. What I didn't understand, until much later, was how far she would take it when she got desperate. Her money problems had been building for years. She had always been someone who spent a little more than she earned, borrowed a little when things got tight, told herself she would sort it out later. For a long time, later kept arriving, and she kept managing. But somewhere around 3 years ago, things stopped managing themselves. A bad investment, a loan to help a friend who never paid her back, a medical bill she hadn't expected. It all stacked up faster than she could deal with, and instead of telling anyone in the family, she did what she always did. She smiled through it and looked for a private way out. That private way out had a name, Renato. Renato was introduced to her through a friend of a friend as someone who could help with short-term financial problems. He was a businessman, mid-50s, always dressed perfectly, the kind of man who walked into a room and immediately started calculating what everything in it was worth, including the people. He had a way of making you feel like he was doing you a favor just by talking to you. My mom found him impressive. She trusted him, which was her first mistake. She borrowed money from him, a significant amount, spread out over several months, and Renato was patient about it, which she took as kindness. She didn't realize until later that his patience wasn't generosity. He was letting the number grow on purpose. He was waiting for the right moment to offer her a deal she couldn't refuse. That moment came about 8 months ago. I didn't know any of this was happening while it was happening. What I knew was that my mom had been mentioning this wonderful man in almost every conversation for months. Every Sunday call, every time I visited, he's so successful, so stable, so established. She'd mention his name, Rodrigo, drop a few details about how much he had, how good his family was, and then look at me like I was supposed to be taking notes. I wasn't taking notes, because I was already with someone I had been with for almost 3 years, someone she knew very well and had never once pretended to like. His name is Lucas. Lucas and I met at a birthday party thrown by a mutual friend. Very ordinary night. He showed up in a plain white t-shirt, drove a used car, and spent most of the evening talking to me about a book he had just finished, not trying to impress anyone, not working the room, just genuinely interested in the conversation. I fell for him by the end of that night without fully realizing it was happening. My mom met him a few months later. The first dinner was polite enough on the surface, but within 20 minutes she had asked him what he did for work, what company, what his prospects looked like. Lucas gave answers that were technically accurate, but vague. He said he worked in business management. He said the company was private. He smiled and redirected the conversation. My mom smiled back and stored away her conclusions. She called me the next morning. "He has nothing to offer you," she said. I told her that's not how I thought about people. She said, "That's because you're young." I said, "I'm an adult." She said, "You're an adult who doesn't understand how the world works yet." That conversation happened in different forms probably 30 more times over the next 2.5 years. Lucas was too vague about his work. Lucas didn't seem ambitious enough. Lucas didn't show off enough, didn't drive the right car. She never said anything directly cruel about him, but she made her feelings clear every single time his name came up. And I kept choosing him anyway. So when she started pushing the Rodrigo thing, I genuinely thought it was just the latest version of the same campaign. I ignored it, stayed polite, changed the subject. I wasn't taking it seriously. Then she called me on a Tuesday afternoon and asked if she could talk to me about something important. Her voice had that tight, controlled sound that meant she was managing something barely. I said, "Of course." She told me about the debts. All of it. The full, real picture for the first time. I sat on my couch and felt something heavy settle in my chest. She sounded exhausted. She sounded ashamed. And I felt terrible for her. I told her we would figure it out. I told her she should have come to me sooner. I told her not to panic because we would look at the numbers together and find a way forward. And then she said, "Renato has already offered a way forward." I said, "What do you mean?" She said that Renato was willing to cancel the entire debt, everything, completely wiped, if I agreed to get engaged to her son, Rodrigo. The silence that followed that sentence was probably 5 seconds. It felt much longer. "Mom, you can't be serious. Just meet him once. He's a good man. You might—" "Absolutely not. If you just gave it a chance, this conversation is over." I hung up. I gave myself 10 minutes to sit with how angry I was. Then I called her back and told her calmly that I understood she was in a terrible position and I still wanted to help her, but not like that. Never like that. She said she understood. She said she wouldn't push it. I believed her. She lied. I found out what was actually happening from my cousin, Patricia, who called me on a Thursday evening 6 weeks later, sounding confused. She said, "Did you know your mom sent out invitations?" I said, "Invitations for what?" She said, "For your engagement dinner." I made her repeat it. She read me the invitation, my name, Rodrigo's name, a date, a restaurant, a time, 30 people on the guest list, including family members I hadn't spoken to in years. It was real, it was printed, it had been mailed to people's homes. I hung up with Patricia and tried to call my mom 4 times. No answer. I got in my car and drove to her apartment. She opened the door, and before I could say a single word, I just held up my phone with Patricia's message on the screen and looked at her. She had the expression of someone who had been caught, but also, underneath that, looked almost relieved, like she had been carrying something heavy and could finally put it down. She said, "I was going to tell you. I just needed everything to be confirmed first. You sent invitations, Mom. You put my name on an invitation for an engagement I never agreed to." She started to cry. She talked about how scared she had been, how many months she had barely slept, and how the number kept growing and she couldn't see any other way out. She talked about Rodrigo like she knew him personally, said he was gentle and responsible, and that Renato had shown her pictures and he seemed like someone I could actually be happy with. She said she just wanted to fix things. She said she was still my mother and she was trying to protect me the only way she could see how. I let her say all of it. I didn't interrupt. And then something inside me that I didn't expect. I got calm. Not the fake, fragile kind that breaks if you push it. Real calm, the kind that comes when you've made a decision. I said, "Okay, I'll come to the dinner." She looked at me like she wasn't sure she had heard correctly.
"I'll come," I said, "but I'm bringing someone with me." She assumed I meant a friend. She said, of course, that was fine. She even smiled a little. I drove home and called Lucas. There is something important I need to tell you about Lucas, because without this piece, the rest of the story doesn't land properly. About 4 months before all of this happened, on a quiet evening at his place, Lucas told me the truth about his work, the full truth. He wasn't just working in business management. He didn't just work for the company he had mentioned. He owned it. He had founded it when he was 27, built it through years of work that he described simply and without drama, and by the time we met, it had grown into one of the largest private logistics and investment operations in the country. It employed thousands of people. His name was on the contracts, the annual reports,
Another pause. He said, "He works for me." I sat down on the edge of my bed because my legs stopped working properly. What? He runs one of my regional divisions, has for 6 years. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Lucas said, very quietly, "Do you want to go?" I said yes. He said, "I'll be there." The restaurant my mom had chosen was the kind of place that had heavy menus and dim lighting and made everyone feel like something significant was supposed to happen there. She had reserved a private room. There were flowers on the tables. 30 people arranged in small clusters, talking, glasses already in hand. She had really done this. She had really built the whole thing. Renato was already in the room when we arrived, standing near the center like he was hosting, confident, relaxed. His son Rodrigo sat nearby and looked like he would rather be somewhere else. I noticed that immediately. He had the look of someone who had also not entirely chosen this. My mom saw me come in and lit up. Then her eyes moved to Lucas and her expression buckled. She was at my side in seconds, pulling me toward the edge of the room, speaking low and fast. "Why is he here? I said you could bring a friend." "He is my friend. This is not the time. Mom, I need you to trust me for the next few minutes." She didn't have time to respond because Renato came over with his handshake and his smile and introduced himself to me like we were business partners sitting down to sign something. Then he looked at Lucas. He didn't recognize him right away. That made sense. Lucas had never met with regional directors face to face. Contracts were signed through intermediaries. Video calls were rare and kept brief. Renato knew the name, obviously. He had signed it on documents for 6 years, but he had never stood in a room with the face attached to it. He said, "And you are?" Lucas said his full name. I watched Renato's face. It was like watching a man step off what he thought was solid ground and realize mid-step there was nothing under his foot. His expression didn't collapse dramatically. It did something worse. It went very still and very careful, the way a face goes when a person is rapidly recalculating everything and trying not to show it. The room was still mostly going about its business, glasses clinking, someone laughing at the far end. Most people had no idea what had just happened in this small corner. But Renato knew, and my mom, watching Renato's face, understood that something had gone seriously wrong. Lucas didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a performance of it. He just looked at Renato the way you look at someone when you want them to feel the full weight of what you both know, without anyone else in the room needing to hear it. He said, "I didn't realize you were the one involved in putting this together. We should find time to talk, professionally." 6 words. Professionally. That word sat in the air between them like something with mass. Rodrigo looked at the floor. My mom sat down in the nearest chair very slowly, like her body made that decision before her mind did. I looked around that room. My family, her friends, people who had come to watch me get handed off as a solution to a problem I had never created, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel in that moment. Completely steady. I said, loud enough for the room to hear, "I'm not getting engaged tonight. I was never going to get engaged tonight. I'm with someone I chose, someone I love, and that's not changing. I think this dinner can just be dinner." The silence lasted a few seconds. Then it filled back in with people's voices, the way silence always does when no one knows how to respond to the truth. We left before dessert. Lucas held my hand in the parking lot, and neither of us said anything for a while. Then I started laughing, that strange, breathless kind of laughing that happens when something has been too much for too long, and your body needs to let it out somewhere. He laughed too. Then I cried a bit. Then I was okay. My mom called me a week later. It was a different kind of call than any we'd had before. Her voice was quiet in a real way, not a managed way. She apologized. Not all at once, not perfectly, but she kept talking until she got to the part that mattered, that she had stopped seeing me as her daughter and started seeing me as a way out. She said that out loud, and I think saying it cost her something, which meant it was real. Renato's arrangement with Lucas's company was reviewed not long after. The details aren't mine to share, but the regional division he ran saw some changes. Lucas proposed to me 3 months later, at his apartment, no guests, no arrangement, just him, nervous for the first time since I had known him, holding a ring he had picked out himself and asking me a question that was completely, entirely his. I said yes before he finished the sentence. If this story got you, go watch the next one.